welcome back to another edition of the Great Lakes Divide podcast. You're hearing it here courtesy of the Record Lounge and the sounds coming in. Brought to you by Heather Frary and her staff at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. How long has this been going on by Ace, one of Tom's all-time favorites? Heather said she was in a yachty mood, like a yacht going out on one. And that's great because with this cold weather holding on for just a little bit longer, I imagine being in a boat, maybe off of Lake St. Clair, something like that. And you'll hear Going Out, Breezin' by George Benson. Some good soulful music for you. Maybe get you thinking warm weather and get you thinking March Madness, because that's just around the corner. Some of the conference tournaments already beginning. I'm watching a lot of college basketball myself with a crazy schedule here in Denver. I'm doing morning show. I'm getting back. And, of course, the games are 2 hours earlier here in the afternoon. So I'm pulling a Tom Crawford. I have my own kind of Crawford indoor setup. Not quite as fancy as the voice you hear on the other end of this microphone, Tom Crawford. But we're going to work on it, try to get our setup good. And if you want the equipment to hear it, you can get it at the Record Lounge. As a matter of fact, high-fidelity stereo equipment, all the latest and greatest in vinyl, new music every Friday, the all-time greats, also in ample supply, special collector's items they'll find for you if they don't have them in store. And here's the thing, they might even have it in store. They've got so much selection there. You won't find a better record store or journey back through time in all of the state of Michigan. Heather's simply the best. And you can find that too, Tina Turner, I'm sure, greatest hits on vinyl there at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Well, it all comes down to this. One more regular season game across the Big Ten schedule, and 3 teams still vying for a share of the Big Ten title. Now, Illinois, having fallen at Ohio State, now a game back, probably not in the mix because one of the 3 teams, Maryland, Wisconsin, how about these Badgers, winning 7 games in a row, and Michigan State, all tied atop the standings at 13-6. The Terrapins have slipped of late. They've dropped 2 straight. Michigan State has caught fire, and they've shown some fire, as we'll talk about in just a moment. How about this? Would you have guessed MSU, having lost 4 of 5 games, including home games against Penn State and Maryland, would then go on the road in back-to-back games and beat Maryland and Penn State and overcome a 19-point deficit in the first half against the Nittany Lions? Simply an outstanding win. And the Spartans able to pull it out of the fire, 79-71. It sets up for Sunday's finale. Seems like Michigan State's had a few of these where they finish the season at home against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And they'll do that this Sunday afternoon. It'll be a 4:30 p.m. Eastern time start on CBS against the 19th-ranked Buckeyes, who, again, kind of righted their ship with that win on their home floor where they've been playing extremely well of late. They've beaten Michigan there. They beat Maryland there. They beat Illinois there. But they've got to come to East Lansing to the Buckeyes. Another weird quirk in the schedule. You know, Michigan State hadn't seen Iowa until late February, and they only play the one time. Same thing with Ohio State, except they don't play each other till the very last game. So who knows what this matchup will hold for the Spartans. But we get into the nitty-gritty of this 79-71 come-from-behind triumph for the Spartans. Now let's just look at the timeline early on in this game for Michigan State. In fact, 4:15 to go in the first half. Lamar Stevens hits 2 free throws, makes it 41-22 Penn State. And I was chalking this one up. I said, this one's over. I mean, what are they going to do? They have another stinker of a performance on the road. They fall behind by this insurmountable margin, and they have to claw their way back. But claw their way back they did in the closing moments of that first half, able to get it down to 15, and then a turnaround in the early portion of the second half. Not sure what was said at halftime of this game, but by the 15:03 mark, so we're talking about 9 minutes of game elapsed time, and Aaron Henry 3 tied it up, and then just a few moments later, after a Penn State turnover, Xavier Tillman Sr. makes a layup and gives the Michigan State a lead that they would never relinquish at 51-49. Pedal to the metal the rest of the way. They outscored Penn State in the second half 48-25, and there was one iconic scene where Tom Izzo and Cassius Winston had a little bit of a dust-up, shall we say. Tom Izzo wanted him to look to the sideline. Maybe wanted him to take a timeout. Cassius said, I've had enough of this crap, and he took it to the rack himself and scored. Then a timeout was called, and they're about to go loggerheads after one another. Big guy, DJ Stevens, assistant coach for Michigan State, steps in between the two of them, and I guarantee you to the bottom of my soul Tom Izzo wanted that. He was pushing Cassius Winston for that. He wanted that fire. He wanted that tenacity. He wanted that anger out of Cassius Winston, and he got it. Cassius struggled in this game. Make no mistake about it. First half, he was held largely in check, and credit Penn State. This is an excellent basketball team. I'm very excited to see what the Nittany Lions might be able to do in the big tournament. But Cassius ends up with 14 points, just 5 of 7 shooting, 7 assists in this one. Another tremendous performance from the X-Man. Double-double and a strong one from Tillman. 23 points, 15 boards in this game. Aaron Henry made an appearance. 12 points, 8 rebounds for him. How about Rocket Watts? I mean, Tom and I have been raving about this young man, and he's just, again, starting to figure it out, starting to scratch the surface. Didn't shoot well from 3, 2 of 10, but was 5 of 10 from 2, was aggressive, was assertive, was confident, took charge. 18 points for the Rocket Man. And you look at what they're able to do now with this starting 5, and Malik Hall, believe me, although he didn't have an enormous game and he did have foul trouble and ended up fouling out, he's a big part of this. We both agree, Tom and I, that Kyle Ahrens is going to be a big part of this. Gabe Brown hits a couple of shots. That's a big part of this. And I'll say this. You look at his stat line, you're not impressed. But there was a sequence here, and I know I'm an apologist for Thomas Kithier. I just am. There's just something about the kid I like as a glue guy. I think he's capable of more. I think he's had his ups and downs this season, but solid, fundamental play, being in the right place and making a good play at the right time, saving a ball from going out of bounds, taking a charge, getting a key rebound, having the sense and awareness. He has got an enormous, incredible basketball IQ. If whatever he lacks in physical talent, and I think he has a good deal of that, he contributes in the time that he's in there. Now, I'm saying all of this. He had 4 fouls in only 4 minutes. He didn't score, but there was, if you go back and watch this game, one particular sequence where he was key to this turnaround for Michigan State. He certainly was. And Michigan State rebounded extremely well in this game overall. 43-35, they outboard Penn State. They hold the Nittany Lions largely in check in the second half after allowing nearly 100-point pace in the first half. And Tom Izzo saying at halftime during the interview there on ESPN that Cassius Winston's got to decide to guard somebody. And if he guards somebody, maybe his offense will pick up. Well, he was right on both counts. And maybe that kind of fueled into the tete-a-tete that Winston and Izzo had. But I loved it. I got to say this, as a Michigan State fan, if you follow this team the way that I have for so many years, you love seeing the confrontation. Other people might watch and go, you guys are crazy. What's going wrong? Is there trouble in paradise? No. This is the sign of a team that's figuring it out, that's getting ready to hit the ground running in March and look out whatever team stands in front of them. As again, MSU gets the job done on the road. They shoot 53.3% from the floor, and that was the difference. The shooting percentage in this game, those 20 points higher than Penn State. Michigan State hit 9 more shots, period, from the floor, and Penn State couldn't make that up. 79-71 final. Tom, as you're watching this, I'm thinking back, they had a comeback like this on the road against Northwestern a few years ago. That's Northwestern. That was a team that was not as good as Penn State. And then I think back also to the 2000 tournament against Syracuse where they trailed by 17, and at halftime, Mateen Cleaves goes up to Mo Pete and puts a chokehold on him up against a locker. I've heard Tom Izzo tell that story. I've talked to Mateen Cleaves about that story. I mean, that was a seminal turning point in a team that had a lot of fight in the dog, the Flintstones, that winning that championship was a life or death matter for Cleaves, and we started to see a little bit more of that killer instinct from this year's Spartans. Your thoughts?
Yeah, in fact, I was doing a video blog. I said 10-2. They'll come back. Michigan State's going to come back. I mean, I know even when it was 40-22, God's honest truth, I thought they would come back, at least compete in the second half. But to evaporate that 15-point lead in 5 minutes, the first 5 minutes of the second half was pretty dang impressive. This team reminds me, and people probably get tired of me saying it, but this 79 team, and a reason it is they're paying back people. They're paying back Penn State for what they did in East Lansing. They've done that to a couple other teams that they paid back. I just see this team galvanizing with when you talk about Rocket Watts and what he does, able to create a shot by himself. if you will. They didn't have that before. When I saw that optic look at Crisler when they played Michigan, standing around waiting for Cash to do something, and it looked like they were out of energy. Xavier Tillman, though, you want me to tell you the difference between Michigan and Michigan State? Mm-hmm. And I say this with jealousy and yearn, and this is no knock against John Teske. Well, the person, and I'll talk more about Teske when we talk about Senior Day, what transpired in Ann Arbor tonight, but that's the difference. Tillman, you Michigan State people, you got one hell of a center. You got the best defensive center in the conference, and that's what's going to carry you deep into a March run, I believe. When you have that, when you have four players that can deliver, and I'm talking the other person being Aaron Henry, because Aaron Henry driving to the lane, he causes havoc on defense. So, I mean, and then Kithier can mop out whoever the other person's going to be to play that fifth slot. Michigan State is rolling right now, and I think they're going to play for a while here in March.
They won 4 straight, and to Tom's point, Xavier Tillman, I think you can make a very strong argument for him as the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, based on think of the bigs that he's had to guard this year, the renaissance of centers in the Big Ten, from Kofi Coburn to Luka Garza, just to name 2. And of course, you go on down the line. Teske's not an easy matchup at 7'1". Tillman's not a true 5 in terms of his size, but his toughness, his strength, his intelligence, his talent, athleticism, all of these things combine to form a formidable basketball player down low. And Tom's right. This is the key. I mean, you can have a legitimate conversation as to who the MVP of the Spartans is this year. I mean, you're going to think, hands down, it's Cassius Winston, and I won't necessarily debate you on that. But you can make the argument, certainly, for Xavier Tillman, where would this team be without the X-Man? I mean, he's just been so crucial and clutch. And before you laugh at Tom Crawford's comparison to the 79 team, I was thinking, Magic Johnson, 79, they win it all. Greg Kelser, Jay Vincent. No, I get you, but take a look at how analogous the standings are. In this year's Big Ten, you've got 3 teams at 13-6, Michigan State being one of them, and Illinois a game back at 12-7. Look at the 79 standings. You got 3 teams.
It's a 3-way tie.
Yeah.
When Wesley Campbell, Sr., hit that half-court shot, Michigan State lost in Madison on the last day of the regular season. This is before they had a Big Ten tournament days, obviously, and that caused a 3-way tie. That all 13-5.
Yep.
I think Purdue was the other team, wasn't it not?
It was Purdue and Iowa, both ranked, and then Ohio State was a game back, like Illinois is this year, at 12-6. And it's just so similar in the breakdown of the standings, how many teams are involved, how closely together they're bunched. Big Ten had a strong year there overall in 1979, and Tom harkens back to that game at Wisconsin. Now think about this. A half-court shot back then was worth 2 points. It wasn't even
I know. And you don't think, another thing, about this team that I want to go. You were talking about the defense of Xavier Tillman about Michigan State. Is Rocket Watts? When you have a freshman, I mean, he is really, really defending well. And not too many times you have a freshman who can defend like he can. I mean, Michigan had a guy named Gary Grant years ago.
Oh yeah.
Who could? You never had it. You didn't teach him how to play defense. He knew coming in. Rocket Watts has kind of got that little bit of that to him. And I just think he's destined to be he's the next Spartan guy that I'm going to lament / fear or, drive me crazy down the road. There's always one guy.
Yeah.
There's Miles Bridges and there's Cash. There's always one guy that sticks out that can't wait till he goes away. Rocket Watts is that guy.
And that's the thing, is why I love college basketball so much is you watch these players grow and evolve and learn and mature. And a lot of times you see this transition, and I've talked to Tom Izzo about this many times, and I mentioned in the podcast, not just following up on the old line, what's the best thing about freshmen, they become sophomores, but in college basketball, in today's game, where so much more pressure is on a freshman to play right away because guys don't stay 4 years. There's only so many Cassius Winstons out there or Xavier Simpsons out there. And so you need a freshman like Malik Hall Hall and certainly Rocket Watts to step up and step in, because think about it. This is a roster right now with eligibility that could still have Miles Bridges, Jaren Jackson, Nick Ward, Josh Langford if healthy. I mean, think about this roster, but that's a bygone era. That's just not going to happen anymore. Therefore, a Rocket Watts, he's had frustrating moments this year, but the moments with Rocket, usually the frustration I feel is short-lived because he's making mistakes of aggression. He's not afraid out there to make a mistake, and that's fine. Go out there and learn. Take your lumps. Don't worry about it. And that's hard to do, I admit and acknowledge. You got a coach like Tom Izzo is going to be riding you, but if you believe that Tom Izzo wants you to be better and you trust that that's the case, that you can take the yelling from him, and Rocket Watts has took that. He's been blown by a few times defensively, or it looks like here was some miscommunication, but Tom, you could not be more on point. He is figuring it out on both ends of the floor. The defense is feeding the offense, and yeah, I see him being a two-way, just lockdown force for Michigan State over the next couple of years. I could definitely see him leaving for the NBA after his junior year, but I think he's got the feel right now to me of a 3-year guy. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly do. And Michigan State's got more players in the pipeline. I'm not just saying that he's the only guy that's going to be good. And who knows? The landscape of these teams. Who's going to stay and who. Every year it changes. So you really can't anticipate. I have no idea what Xavier Tillman's going to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows? I think he's ready. I think move along right now, Xavier. I think you're good to go. But,
listen to you.
He's a defensive player of the year. Michigan State, I said this on a podcast a couple of days ago that when I talked about this, there's a potential 4-way tie or whatever. I said 3 of those, or those 5-way tie. There's 5 teams. It could be a 5-way tie. It was 6 going in when we were in last weekend. So it was 5. I said, well, 3 of them are going to be gone, and one of them's gone tonight, Illinois, and Wisconsin's going to be gone, or maybe it was just 4. It's just going to be Michigan State and Maryland. That's it. It's Michigan State and Maryland, and Michigan State fans have to decide what they want to have happen at noon on Sunday. Do they want a hole or a soul? A soul or a coal? And if they want a coal, or if they want a soul, they have to cheer for Michigan. And Tom Izzo will tell you, if you look him straight in the eye, I promise you, he didn't want any help from the guys in Ann Arbor. So he'll take the co versus a soul.
I think
it's just like Judd Heathcote back in '95.
No, Tom, that's insane. I'm going to say it right now.
Well, that's the way it is.
I know.
That's the way it is.
I don't play that way. I'm not wired that way. I want to win.
Well, you aren't, but you have common sense.
Well, I guess, but I would tell Coach Izzo this straight to his face. I mean, you have a chance to win a title, to be the number 1 seed in a brutal Big Ten tournament coming up. You want every advantage possible. And I tell you what, a regular season championship, especially this year in this Big Ten, it means the world, Tom. It means way more than a Big Ten tournament title. And I want it for Michigan State by themselves. And by God, go blue. Go blue. I'll say it. I'll say it over and over on Sunday. I have no problem with this.
You can say it.
I just did.
Izzo ain't feeling it.
Well, he doesn't have to feel it, and he doesn't have to admit it, but I guarantee you he wants Maryland to lose on Sunday, and that means Michigan wins. So I'm going to call it what it is, okay? I don't have any problem rooting for the Wolverines on Sunday because that's better for Michigan State. Now, they've got to take care of business. The Spartans, that's no walkover game at home against Ohio State. This is a hot Buckeyes team right now. And, oh, by the way, Wisconsin's not out of it, Tom. They've won 7 in a row, and they go to Bloomington to face Indiana on Saturday. So we'll know whether this is a 3-way deal.
That's the other team. They're going to lose at Indiana. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's a pretty big guarantee by you. Indiana's not like doing gangbusters right now.
Indiana has been road weary. They're back home.
Yeah,
and they're a hell of a lot better. And now the second straight home game, they'll beat Wisconsin.
Well, and they are kind of maybe playing for their tournament lives in a way. They got some work to do as I break down, and I'll have my newest brackets out on Friday here. And right now I have Indiana, I believe, is a 10 seed that is not safely in by any means. If they lose out, I don't think they're in the tournament.
To do. They can't screw around here because you could have a tournament, from mid-major upsets and that kind of stuff that you have to worry about.
And that's already happening. And so I think Indiana is very much bubbly, and I think Rutgers certainly on the bubble. They have work left to do too. Purdue can still get in this thing. They got to string together some wins though, because they got the 14 losses. That's a big number.
They got work in Indy they got to do. That's absolutely. But they're at least doing it in their own state. That helps.
And it's true. But I think other than that, the teams right now, which are all ranked in the Big Ten, think about this. 8 Big Ten teams are ranked right now. And all of them, I think, are locks for the tournament. And that's just, it's been, a renaissance year for the Big Ten. This is a tremendous league with great teams and talent across the board. Only a couple of duds in the conference right now. And most years, I think Minnesota might be good enough to get into the tournament, but there's just so many other good teams, and I think Richard Pitino's coached them out of a couple of wins. We can say that safely, but that all being said, this has been, again, one of the more enjoyable and exciting Big Ten regular seasons I can recall. So the tail of the tape here as we go into the weekend, Wisconsin is at Indiana. That's a Saturday game. That's a noon Eastern start on ESPN. If you're a Michigan State fan, you're rooting for Indiana in this game, obviously. If you're a Michigan fan, I don't know, maybe you are too. Michigan State, Ohio State will be a 4:30 start time on Sunday, televised on CBS. Again, the Buckeyes coming to East Lansing, and we turn in a moment to the Michigan Wolverines. Now, the Spartans will already know what they're playing for because Michigan-Maryland's the early game on Sunday.
Yeah, that's at noon.
That's a noon tip on Fox. So at that point, when Michigan State takes the floor in East Lansing against the Buckeyes, they're going to know whether they're playing for a share of the Big Ten title or perhaps, if all things go right, if Indiana beats Wisconsin, if Maryland falls to Michigan, they'll be playing for a Big Ten title all by themselves. In just a moment, we'll get Tom's breakdown of Michigan's win at home over Nebraska in Ann Arbor. He was there on Thursday night, and this entire podcast, Great Lakes Divide, is brought to you by the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Again, the yacht rock coming in and out you can find in ample supply, going up and down the rows of vinyl records at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Heather Frary does her best to assemble the finest collection. And by the way, you can sell your collectible albums there. If you have some in stock, maybe that you don't have any use for anymore, maybe some old albums, Heather is going to turn that into sweet cash for you right away, and especially if they're hard to find items or highly in demand items or a combination of those two, they'll dicker and deal with you. It's just like the old days. You walk in there and you get the hi-fi stereo equipment that is certified through their electrician on site. If it doesn't work, bring it back in. They'll fix it for you free of charge. It's all about customer service and that personal relationship between you, Heather Frary, and her entire staff there. They're easy to find. South on Washington from 496, downtown Lansing, east side of the street. Park right outside for free. Walk in, take that journey back through time, take a look ahead at the new music on the horizon, which Heather has done a really good job of setting us up with. I've had several listeners of the podcast say, I've never heard that song before. And when I heard it on the Great Lakes Divide podcast, I wanted to check it out. And I'm going to go to the Record Lounge. And we know several of our loyal listeners there in Lansing are regular customers of the Record Lounge, because when you support them, you support us. And if you support us, please think to support them. Local business right off of Main Street there, so to speak, in the figurative sense. Don't go online and talk to customer service reps in another country, in another time zone, another day. Talk to Heather Frary, talk to her staff. They're there to help you, and they'll find it for you, locate it. If it's anywhere else in the state, they'll bring it in store within 48 hours and put it in your hot little hands at a very good price. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Well, Tom Crawford was in Ann Arbor, and quite a scene there on Senior Day, saying goodbye to seniors Xavier Simpson and John Teskey. Even John Beilein making a special cameo appearance. We'll get Tom's thoughts on that in just a moment. But first, Juwan Howard in his post-game comments talking about both of his departing seniors.
The year that I've been here working with John and Xavier has been awesome. They've been great student athletes that have did an awesome job of represent this block area. It's been a dream for me to be able to come into a program I have two guys that have been great examples, great leaders to each and every guy in the locker room. I'm just so proud of the career they're having thus far here in Michigan, and I just suspect that there are going to be some more exciting things ahead of them if they want to continue playing basketball.
I really enjoyed the embrace between Juwan Howard and John Teske at the end of the game. He gave them their moment to come off the floor there to the applause of the Crisler faithful. It's kind of nice playing a game that, wasn't a lot of drama. Early on there was, and we'll get Tom's thought on that. But 82-58, the final score in this one. A mercurial game for one Isaiah Livers. He started hot, got cold, got hot again, found a stroke, second half, double-double. 18 points, 10 rebounds. He was 7 of 18. You like to see him take charge, be the big dog for Michigan and bear that burden because he can, because he's capable of doing it, because he's mentally tough enough to do it, because Michigan needs him to do it. Again, 82-58 final. Tom, I'll let you take it from there and just the sights and sounds from Ann Arbor on Senior Day.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's spring break, so the students weren't there, but a really good crowd. I mean, it was filled. I think they had some alumni, Maze Rage people in there. Let me just talk about Senior Day before I get into the details of this game. I mean, Senior Day, is an emotional thing, and it's emotional for the families. So before the game, I'm down there at the Michigan tunnel, not the old North tunnel, but the South tunnel, and where they come out, and I saw like the family, John Teske's sisters when his parents was coming out with him, and they're rolling tears. Okay, it's emotional, and it makes me think that and I know this this has been a rough year for John Teske, and I don't think fans realize how hard that is on the family. And the reason I say that, I hearken back to a conversation I had with John Navarre. You remember the former Michigan quarterback?
Sure do.
His dad, and how much maligned he was in that 0-1 season. And, most of, or at least some of 0-2 and then 0-3, they kind of slackened and took the fans as far as hard on John Navarre. It's just tough being a parent. And I remember his dad telling me, he would be in these conversations outside after at halftime, and these fans be bashing his kid, and he's just standing there in the refreshment line, and how tough that is. And people just don't have any appreciation of what goes into it, what the families go through it, and what the players go through it. And I saw that emotion in John Teske. I think that's why Juwan Howard reached out to him, and an emotional. I mean, John broke down tears during his post-game speech. They had a little post-game. They do theirs different than Michigan State. Michigan State's all at the end. Michigan does theirs at the beginning, and then they'll have they'll throw the microphone to the seniors, and you could just feel the emotion and coming out of John Teske. It's been a rough year. Xavier Simpson has been a brilliant 4-year player for Michigan, and what he's accomplished has been tremendous. I know there was a mishap off the field or away from the court this year, but that doesn't tarnish what he's accomplished at Michigan. I'm sorry to see him go. He's tough. He's a tough dude. He's tougher. He's from Lima. Anybody from Lima is tough, and he certainly epitomizes that. So those two guys had their moment today. And as far as Michigan, at halftime they're up 3. They're up 3 to Nebraska. I'm thinking, this is a team that shot 8 of 30 from the free throw line this past weekend.
Right.
About Nebraska. It's a terrible basketball team, Ryan, as you can concur.
Yeah.
But they got it going in the second half, and that's all that matters. Get this out of the way. Go out and compete in College Park. See if you can win that game and generate some momentum into March Madness. First, the warm-up act, if you will, the Big Ten tournament, where they'll be playing on Thursday, and then obviously the NCAA is the following week.
I think this is an important win for Michigan. I mean, they had the back-to-back tough losses. It was so deflating. Again, the Wolverines, just about a week ago were where the Spartans are now. They were riding high, a 5-game winning streak, back-to-back road wins, tough ones in conference, just like Michigan State just did at Maryland, at Penn State. Michigan did at the Rack and Rutgers, the only team to beat Rutgers there this year in Piscataway. And they go to West Lafayette and beat a feisty Purdue team who've been blowing teams out on their home floor, including Michigan State by 29 points. They win those two. They come back home, lay an egg against Wisconsin. I think that might be a lot more Wisconsin being good than Michigan playing poorly now that I watched the Badgers down the stretch here. And then they lose a tough one in Columbus to Ohio State, just a team that has their number. They come back home. They right the ship against Nebraska. They have their feel-good moment for their seniors. They coalesce back together. Livers is back at full strength. It looked like at least he was playing with that assertiveness. He was one of 2 Wolverines with a double-double. Xavier Simpson being the other, had 11 points and 10 assists. And they forced 22 Nebraska turnovers. And when Michigan's at their best, they're locking it down on the defensive end. They outshot Nebraska by nearly 9 percentage points from the floor, hitting 11 more shots from the floor. Weren't great from 3 in this game, and that's just kind of across the spectrum right now in college basketball with most teams. I think Michigan State being another example of with the three-point line expanded back, it's a lot more difficult to hit those shots consistently. Just 5 different double-digit scores in this one. Brandon Johns off the bench, catches fire a little bit, Tom. He's 10 points, 5 rebounds. Had both Franz Wagner and Simpson with 11, and Teskey with 12. To see his reemergence just a little bit offensively, the true test for me with a Teskey, Michigan's lost twice to a team like Illinois and a guy like Kofi Coburn down low, but Michigan's beaten the likes of Luka Garza up front earlier in the season going head-to-head with Teskey. What is the measuring stick for you with Teskey going forward? Because I really think, you look at every other guy, obviously Simpson's important, you need Livers to lead in a lot of ways of scoring, etc., but they need Teskey to hold his own in the post, or Michigan's going to have a really tough struggle both in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament.
Well, yeah, what happened with Teskey is all the woes that he had defensively, and then what it did is it rolled into his competence offensively. So what he's got to do is focus on offense, of trying to draw contact instead of doing these little half hooks, body hooks that where he's rolling away and doesn't even land where he's supposed to land. He slants away, and it slants away from the basket. You're not going to go to the foul line, and you're typically going to miss a shot. He hit his first shot today, left along baseline hook, and that was good. Yeah, it takes a Nebraska maybe to get your confidence back, and so whatever it takes, because the next week it's going back to playing bigs. I'll tell you what, it's tough in the Big Ten. You get out of the Big Ten and start playing regular teams, it might be a lot easier. The other thing about, you're talking about how fragile these teams are, like Michigan, and 1 week is fine, then the next week goes back the other way. It's because the Big Ten is so good.
Yeah.
That's why it's so good. And so because it's so good, any cracks, chinks in your armor just crack they just break apart because you're playing such tough competition. So I think it speaks to the league more than the weaknesses and flaws within the teams.
And again, I can't stress this enough to what Tom is saying. You have 8 Big Ten teams that are ranked. Think about that. 8 of the 25. That's about a third.
That's never happened before, ever, since they've had rankings in the history.
A third of the top 25 Big Ten teams. And so what you're going to see here as I project my brackets, you're not going to want to see a Big Ten team opposite you because they're going to be seated lower because they've beaten each other's brains in for the better part of 2 and 3 months. And you might get a Maryland as a 3-4 seed or a Michigan State as a 3-4 seed. You want to see them? You want to see Wisconsin or Iowa as a 5, Ohio State or maybe Michigan as a 6? How about Illinois as a 7, Mr. 2 seed? You want to see the Fighting Illini in the second round? I don't think so.
No, and you're right. And the thing of it is, remember in the old days of the NCAA, you would not have to play a team from your own conference. At the very earliest would be the Elite 8.
Correct.
But that's all changed now because there's so many, multiple teams from one league. And the new pod system might have something to do with that. I'm not sure exactly. But, yeah, you could play a team from your own conference the second game. That's really That would be sad.
Well, to me, Tom,
because you earned the right to get out of that conference.
That's what I mean. This should be a true cross-sectional national tournament. It is not within regions like, districts are drawn up in high school basketball. It's a national tournament. And when I've talked to Jerry Palm about this, who does bracketology for CBS, he and I have gone back and forth on this issue because it used to be a rule. They would have a set rule on their template, the selection committee, where thou shalt not put two conference teams head-to-head, like you said, until the regional final, the Elite Eight round. They threw that rule out because of the mega conferences getting bigger and bigger. But to me, while it should not be a rule, it should be a goal. And for Michigan State to have had to play Minnesota in the second round last year was stupid. Yeah. I think that was lazy, bad bracketing. I'm coming up with brackets, Tom, and it takes a little bit of work in doing, but you can manufacture a fair bracket that spreads these teams out, that puts no more than 3 Big Ten teams in the same region, and if they don't meet at least until the Sweet 16 round. If you could guarantee me that, I think that's fair. But if you have cannibalism of the conferences, and not just the Big Ten, any conference, let's say the ACC had a big year like the Big Ten's having, it's not fair to me that the conference has to cannibalize its own teams and sacrifice them at the altar rather than having cross-sectional games. Let's see who the best conference is. Let's have the best from the Big Ten play the best from the Big East and the Pac-12 and have that cross matchup effect. I think if they put enough time, thought, and effort into the bracketing, they use the net rankings and all that, and I get it, you could still kind of fudge a seed here and there and make sure you have that spread so that as many Big Ten teams as possible can get to the Sweet 16. That's a big thing. Remember, every time there's that break in the action, the tournament at the first weekend, Tom, and we say, there's 5 Big Ten teams in the Sweet 16. That's a big accomplishment. Yeah. That's good for the conference. That's good for recruiting. That's good for the brand, and it helps sell it nationally. So if you have too many of these early head-to-heads, which again they're avoidable, they're preventable, they're stupid, and they're lazy if they let it go. Like, that's good enough. That bracket looks good to me. And I remember one year, I think a couple years ago, they had 3 Big Ten teams, Tom, in the same half of one bracket region. That's insanity to me.
No, I think your laziness is the right term. Indeed, because the Sweet 16 almost has the magic of what the Elite Eight had 25 years ago. And that's just, I think part of that is just the flat-out exposure of the NCAA tournament. I mean, it has so much notoriety. It brings so much glamour to schools of all sizes that you get in the Sweet 16. I know the Big Ten teams don't do this, but a lot of teams would hang a banner to get to the Sweet 16. That's a big deal. Your team becomes somewhat of a household name because you're talked about more. Who do you got coming in the Sweets? Well, I still have this team and that team, and that's awful cool for a team that hasn't got to the Sweet 16 in a while. That's special.
Well, and then
get out of the first weekend is brutal. Yeah. It's hard.
It is. They're 3 4-team tournaments. That's how Mike Krzyzewski breaks it down.
Many tournaments.
That's how Tom Izzo breaks it down. That's how Steve Fisher said it back in 1989. That's how they won their championship. And think about the exposure for a team like Loyola Chicago a few years ago. I was in San Antonio, Tom, with the Wolverines and Sister Jean and Porter Moser and this great story that Michigan, unfortunately for America, ended, but beat them in the Final Four. But just to get to that point, that small of a school, that level of exposure, kids out there in high school hearing about this university for the first time. It's one of the greater recruiting tools, and I think in a lot of ways, Tom, college basketball is far better at that than college football because there's the hierarchy in college football. These are the few teams that are going to compete for a national championship. Nobody else will. In college basketball, like you said, you could have a Murray State or a Belmont or somebody like that get to the Sweet 16 or a Loyola Chicago to the Final Four, and you have that Cinderella story where dreams come true for the smallest of schools.
Right. No, you're exactly right. Yeah. So I mean, but I think the Big Ten is going to do really well in the tournament.
I do too.
I really do. I think Big Ten people are going to be Big Ten proud. Their team might lose, but I mean I think as a conference, I think they're going to do well. It's just I got that gut feeling. And they're good. These teams are freaking good. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, top to bottom, pretty much in the Big Ten. It brings me to my final question about the Big Ten as we watch this race winnow down for the regular season title, for the seeding in the Big Ten tournament coming up in Indianapolis, and where that all might lead. You know, the Big Ten going to get anywhere from 8 to possibly 10 or maybe even 11 teams, depending on what Purdue's able to do. It's a lot of math to cram them all in there, but I think it is possible. There's a path at least. Tom, there was a question presented on Twitter I wanted to pose to you, and I'll answer it myself after I get your feedback. It's not going to change my answer. But other than Michigan, is there another team in the Big Ten, I want to focus on basketball here, that you specifically hate for some unknown reason that might surprise people? And then I also want to know if there's a team or two in the Big Ten that you kind of root for on the side and you don't really have a problem with.
Well, let me answer the second question first. There's not a Big Ten team I root for on the side other than Michigan.
You're not going to root for Rutgers if they get in?
No. What's that?
You're not going to root for Rutgers if they get in?
I don't have any love interest in the Rutgers Scarlet. I just don't. I'm just not that kind of guy. I'll tell you where that comes from. The fact that going down to the Big Ten tournament, though, so for many years in a row, I still go, but they don't do this practice of showing that video where they have fans from schools cheering their fight song, and everybody, there's no reaction. But when Michigan comes up, the whole arena starts booing. So it's like everybody, the world of the Big Ten against Michigan.
Now you should take that as a compliment, Tom.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know, but piss on the rest of the Big Ten, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm my own team. I only care about Michigan. Well, that's the bottom line. The first question, we know you hate Ohio State, all Michigan fans do, and Michigan State, that's a natural rival. Is there another team in the Big Ten that just bothers you, that gets stuck under your craw, that you can't stand? Boy, that's a good question.
That's why I ask them.
No, I mean, Michigan State, the animosity I have for Michigan State, for football / basketball, and for Ohio State in particular football, there's just so much venom spewed into those two schools. I have nothing left to even care about any other school.
These are interesting answers.
I'm really indifferent.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Like I said, I'm a little bit, I don't know, call me weird, but this Sunday, I'm going to have no problem, no hesitation. I won't even blink rooting for Michigan. It'll be for one day only. And it's only because it benefits Michigan State. And if Michigan, let's say they got a tie for the conference title because they won, I might be less likely to root for them. But they can't. They can't. All they can do on Sunday, and one, help themselves, granted, if they get a win, that's big at College Park in Maryland over the Terrapins. But it helps Michigan State. And it gives them the opportunity to win an outright title. Now, the next level.
That makes sense. I wanted to note, and I actually, I mean, Brad Underwood, I really think is a good coach. I like him. I like how I just like everything about him, how he handles post-game after wins or losses. I've been in front of him in both cases. And that damn school deserves a winner. I mean, they haven't done shit in football or basketball for a long, long time. So if there is one school, and this is still a stretch, we'll go with Illinois.
Well, that's interesting, Tom, because you and I share that. That's what I was going to share, is that Illinois, Penn State, I love Pat Chambers, too, and the story there with the Nittany Lions. I don't really have any ill will toward them. And Rutgers, I will root for those three teams. And when Northwestern had their little run a couple years ago with Chris Collins and they won a game in the tournament, I was rooting for them, too. That's about the limit of it, though. Every other team I have a problem with, either their fan base or some kind of past history in the rivalry that got me riled up for some reason. And like I said, I have no problem rooting for Michigan on Sunday because, again, it benefits Michigan State, and Michigan has no claim to the title other than what they can do to help the Spartans win it. So, Tom, what I wanted to bring up was, okay, it's one thing if Michigan State fans are going to be, so stubborn and self-defeatist and, hate Michigan so much that they're not going to root for them on Sunday, even if it means they have to share a Big Ten title with Maryland. But how about this that I've seen on Twitter? I've seen Michigan fans that are so deranged, Tom, I want you to comment on this, that they actually would prefer Michigan lose to Maryland to deny Michigan State an outright Big Ten title. Is that another level of crazy?
Well, I haven't seen
that's out there. That is out there. Trust me, I've seen it. And I was in awe of it.
That's pretty sick. I mean,
I know.
I listen. This Michigan beating Maryland, does it really have a lot of impact on? I don't even know if it affects the Big Ten standings or for the tournament seeding. I'm not even sure how. And so they're 11-9 versus 10-10 in conference play. They win 20 games as opposed to 19. Does it give them a bump up? I'll tell you what. I'd rather be a 6 seed than a 7, and I sure as hell rather be a 7 seed than an 8 or a 9.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's crazy for anybody who want their team to lose in March. I mean, because there's impact all the way down the stretch. If you're in the tournament, or you're trying to get in the tournament, or you're trying to improve your seeding, it's important to win every game. So those people are idiots.
Okay, I just wanted to get that verdict from you, and of course, Tom commenting on the Michigan Wolverines getting that home win over Nebraska. Final score 82-58. One more time, their finale for the regular season will be noon Sunday Eastern Time, Fox at College Park in Maryland against the Terrapins. The Spartans will follow up on Sunday at 4:30 Eastern Time, CBS at Breslin, Senior Day against Ohio State, saying goodbye to Cassius Winston. My goodness. And Kyle Arndt. I'll have my thoughts on Cassius coming up in our Sunday podcast. One other game that matters as far as the championship is concerned, and that's Wisconsin. They'll finish their season at Indiana on Saturday, so we'll see if they're going to be in the mix for the Big Ten title or if the Hoosiers will deny them of that. Noon start, ESPN Saturday, Wisconsin at Indiana. A couple of thoughts about Michigan in that final game at home there, Tom, and I want to get your thoughts on just what was going through your mind. You were able to look over and you were in close proximity to John Beilein in attendance at the game. It just felt surreal watching it on TV to see him there in that environment, knowing that this is a man without a job.
Yeah, he's a man without a job, but he's not a man without a lot of money. I mean, you don't have to worry about that. I'm
not shedding any tears for him, yeah. But
I was sitting, the suite. I mean, the media level at Crisler. Sometimes I skank away. I have friends in high places. A friend of mine has Kevin Byers got Dr. Byers got a suite, and it was right next to that I sit at a lot of times, and it was right next to where Beilein, which is kind of a Michigan basketball suite. Well, I've seen Rudy Tomjanovich, other Michigan players. So I don't know if it's designated Michigan basketball program, but he was there with his family, and just besieged by people swinging by and seeing him. I mean, and he's just such a classy guy. He's amazing. He's an amazing guy. But I shot a little clip, and I'm gonna probably post it tomorrow on Twitter, of when Xavier Simpson went out of the game for the last time, of John's reaction to that. He loved that kid. He loved Teskey as well, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of thoughts were going through his mind. Of being back at Crisler on Senior Day, and I know the fans, they poured out a lot of love towards him, because when he went up on the big screen, man, and the TV camera was right next to me shooting this picture of Beilein up close, that place was going freaking nuts. Mm-hmm. It was an amazing night at Crisler.
Now, finally, with Juwan Howard, the torch being passed to him, and our talking during the preseason, and I would say early on in the conference schedule, Tom, you said, look, I want the Wolverines to get to 10 wins in conference, and that would be a successful season in my view. Well, here they are at 10-9 in conference, 19-11 overall. They've got some big pelt wins, including home over Michigan State, the win in Atlantis against Gonzaga. They've got some good wins on their schedule. Would you say that this season to this point, if we just stop it right now and review, has met your expectations, fallen short of your expectations, or exceeded your expectations?
It's been right, almost like a bullseye. I mean, when you go from where I thought in early November, I thought that Michigan would be, hover around the first division. Maybe, I didn't realize the Big Ten was going to be this tough, first of all.
Right.
But I thought, my expectations, get in the NCAA tournament, compete, win big games, and have a hell of a recruiting class. And they've certainly got that going. Because this is a program that's developing. It's on the move. I mean, the reason John Teskey is struggling so much is because there's transition when you go from one system to another. He's playing in the post. He's back to the basket. It's been really difficult for him. Defending mano-mano, he's never had to do that before. It's been great. In fact, I was funny asked that question. I said, "What do you wish the guy right next to us was coaching?" And people pause. And no, they're fine with Juwan, but they miss maybe in-game decision making, and then the defense of Luke Yaklich, his assistant. I think are two things that stick out in people's minds when you get in conversation that are missing from this year's team.
If I answer that same question about expectations in Michigan State, that they meet them, fall short of them, or surpass them, I have to give them an incomplete grade at this very moment. But what I will say, well, right now, I would say they've fallen short, only because I did not expect 9 losses at this point in the season. I didn't. 13-6 in conference, about what I thought, and especially as we saw how tough this Big Ten was. But I thought they'd be maybe 15-5, 16-4, so not far off there. But there have been moments in this season where it just kind of wasn't there, and their 3-game losing streak being indicative of that. They went through something similar a year ago. Remember the couple of losses to Indiana, and they found their stride. It seems like they're finding their stride now, and if they're able to beat Ohio State on Sunday, win a portion or maybe all of the Big Ten title regular season championship, make a run through the Big Ten tournament, and possibly get themselves up to, say, a 3 seed, I'm going to say they're right where they need to be to make their big move. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that these Spartans could be a national championship contender. This season across college basketball is so crazy. If you look beyond maybe the top 5 teams right now, if you have the top line of seeds being in any particular order, in the order for me, it's Kansas, Gonzaga, Baylor, Dayton, San Diego State. And San Diego State had a dicey one today, earlier against Air Force. Beyond that, good luck sorting it out. Florida State, they just put up a stinker. Duke's done the same thing. If you think Louisville's great, they've had a couple of floundering performances. The ACC is down. They might only get 4 teams in, with the 3 teams I just mentioned and Virginia being it. And then the Big East is a jumbled mess. Providence is catching fire late. And Villanova, Seton Hall, they've had their trip-ups here and there, and so is Creighton, a team that Michigan beat in the pre-conference schedule. And again, in Seton Hall, a team that Michigan State beat in New Jersey on the road, a true road game in that. So this is up for grabs. Anybody that tells you otherwise is either lying to your face, or they don't know what they're talking about, or a combination of the two. So we'll try to keep this sorted out for you. I'll have another bracket projection on Friday, and then we'll have our next podcast recording after Sunday's action, in which the regular season wraps up. One final thing that I know that Tom wanted to talk about, and I did too, because I saw this unfold and transpire. And that has to do with the very serious outbreak of the coronavirus. Now 2 cases here in Colorado that have been documented. More and more are cropping up across the country. I don't think it's a reason for panic, but certain schools are taking precautions. Chicago State being one of them. They shut their men's and women's programs down for the next 2 games. And I saw the post game. Typically you have the handshake, the line, the players go through, the coaches congratulate each other between Rhode Island or Connecticut rather, and Houston. And Danny Hurley, former coach of Rhode Island, now at Connecticut, they beat Houston and Kelvin Sampson. And Danny Hurley and Kelvin Sampson just did a fist bump. They walked their separate ways. They waved. The teams didn't embrace or shake hands. Maybe some players did on their own. But Graham Couch made a good point, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Tom. Is there a chance that they might shut down the tournament, postpone it, delay it? I don't know, play in front of an arena with no fans in it? I guess anything's possible. But Graham made the point of, in that game you watch, there's blood, sweat, and tears. There's bodies going up against one another in the paint. There's a basketball that they're all touching and sharing with their hands. They're not washing their hands in between. They're sweating all over the ball. They might be bleeding on the ball. They might be drooling on the ball. I don't know. But then they're not going to shake hands at the end of the game. That seems stupid.
Well, I think when people have fear of like in convention business and sporting events, it's not so much the players on the court that they're thinking is going to spread the virus. It's the fans. When you have 18 to 20,000 fans, in concourse areas, all right on top of each other, and then sitting in the stands, I think that's a reference point. I mean, if the NCAA tournament is affected by this, those games are still going to be played. It's just there's not going to be fans in the stands. They're going to be televised. So to reference the players, that's not the point, in my opinion. But what my concern is that every time I wake up in the morning, I get up early and I watch the news, the NBC News, the Today Show, or Good Morning America, whatever. It just seems like this coronavirus is getting at another level every morning. And it's like, and whether the fear is legitimate or not, I have 2 daughters who are in the convention business, and people are canceling conventions. I think there's a paranoia about it more than anything, and of the uncertain. And it's going to be interesting what these next 2 weeks, what transpires in terms of if it continues to generate momentum. The other thing that I've noticed about is, and I was at an event today, is there's some people there's social awkward moments right now, because people typically, will shake hands, do a half hug, you know what I mean? I was at an event where people, I think, looked a little leery of that. Wow. It was funny. And that's awkward. I mean, what do you do? I mean, it's really awkward. We're in for some awkward moments.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, because everybody listening right now, and God forbid this were to happen, you are so much infinitely more likely to have your life taken in a car accident tomorrow than to catch coronavirus and die from it. It doesn't affect little ones the way that the typical flu virus does. It's not dangerous or deadly, it doesn't seem like, for infants and toddlers. It is for older people and for those with compromised immune systems, but they would be susceptible anyway to regular flu or any other kind of virus that's going on out there. So be vigilant, be aware. If you have symptoms, get them treated right away. Go to a doctor. Stay home. Don't go to work if you're sick, and don't even do that if there's no coronavirus. I don't know why people do that. You want to make other people sick? Don't be that guy or that gal. Don't do it. Just stay home if you're sick. Quarantine yourself. And I don't think that people need to panic or get out of control, Tom. I'm with you on this. Again, there's only so much in our daily lives that we can do to keep ourselves safe from anything. And we're all going to go at some time of something. We might not see it coming. I mean, I hate to be that fatalistic about it, but that's just the way it is.
No, it is. But there's certain pockets, like if there was an NCAA tournament game, and I know there's one in Sacramento, because doggone it, I'll bet you Michigan's going to Sacramento. Right. I just got this gut feeling. When you get into Northern California and up into Seattle, I just have a feeling that would be the area that they would fall into that category. We're not doing this for some reason. Seattle's pretty ramped up on this. That town is. Yeah. They're telling everybody to stay home and work from home, and Amazon's doing this and doing. I mean, it's a different alarm level up there. Yes, so I think it depends on the region. We're going to find out real quick, because Selection Sunday is a week from Sunday.
Well, Sacramento definitely being one of those, like you stated, and there are games scheduled for Spokane, Washington. So,
that's right. Yeah, you're right.
That's even closer to Seattle, and that seems to be kind of ground zero for a lot of the cases so far that have been discovered in Washington. Like I said, there are 2 now here in the state of Colorado. Thank God nothing yet in Michigan. I hope that stays the case. But again, live your life. Don't get crazy. Be vigilant and aware. Wash your hands normally, like the way that you should anyway. And hopefully they find a vaccine for this sooner rather than later, although that's going to take a lot of trials and make sure the vaccine itself doesn't kill you instead of the virus. So we'll keep an eye on this, and if any developments occur, we'll certainly have updates for you on Sunday night. That'll be our next podcast, again, following up on the regular season. Michigan State concluding their campaign at home, 4:30 Eastern Time, CBS against Ohio State at Breslin. Senior day for Kyle Ahrens and Cassius Winston. For the Michigan Wolverines, they'll be on the road against Maryland, a chance to help the Spartans out, perhaps. A noon start on Fox on Sunday at College Park against the Terrapins, and the Wolverines trying to finish with a winning record in conference play that would also be win number 20 on their season heading into the Big Ten tournament. That'll do it for us from here for now. For Bluebelly Tom Crawford, who you hear on the other side of this microphone, I'm Ryan Schuling, signing off for the Great Lakes Divide podcast, which of course is brought to you each and every time out by the Record Lounge in Riotown. And what you're hearing now, Breezin', more yacht rock from George Benson by request from our own sponsor, and we thank her dearly, Heather Frary, for keeping us up to date on the world of music, and you should do the same. Like them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, Find them in person. South Washington from I-40-96, downtown Lansing on the east side of the street. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Have a great weekend, everybody.